I'm going to start by removing this latch here. That's basically in the way of the radiator here. To remove this, there are 3 10mm bolts, one on this side, and then 2 right here. Now mine has a lot of witness marks here from just the dirt that's built up around it. Usually you do want to mark it somehow, that way you can put it back the same way it came off so it lines up with the hood. But if yours is the same way, well, you probably don't need to mark it because you can see exactly where it goes. Over here there's going to be an electrical connector that I'm just going to pop out of this fan shroud here, or cover I guess it is. Just like that, and then remove the cable from this securing point. And let's just flip this up and over, get it out of our way. At this point there are 2 more 10mm bolts that I want to remove for these brackets. Remove those brackets. And with those off, you can actually remove this piece here, this cover. On the side right here, you'll see this bracket. I want to take this plastic piece off so I can get easier access to all the hoses and lines that are connected on this side of the radiator. So with a 7mm, I'm going to unbolt this bracket so I can remove the plastic piece. Now you can take this out, remove the wiring off of it. Okay. Right here on the side of the radiator, you'll see this cap. Pop this off. Underneath it, there's a kind of like a hook that needs to get taken off so that we can pull this line away. Grab it and pull up on it just like that. And hook from on top of it or underneath it and remove it completely. Make sure it doesn't go flying. Set it aside, and at this point there will be fluid coming out, so keep that in mind, but this line should be free to come out. Sometimes they're a little stuck, so I'm going to spray some rust penetrant, hopefully break it free. Now if you follow it down a little bit more, you'll see that right there it's attached to the radiator. Let's unclip it off of this bracket down here. I guess pop it off of the radiator, whatever you want to do, but this needs to get removed. There we go. Now we've made room to pull the fan out. Right here there's a 10mm that holds this overflow tank in place. Remove that. Set this overflow tank aside. I'm going to remove the top radiator hose now on the passenger side here. This radiator doesn't have a drain, so coolant will come out of here. That's why I haven't drained it yet. I'm just going to work my way from the top to the bottom and try not to make too much of a mess. Okay, break it free, pull it off of the radiator. I have a collection bucket right underneath. I'm going to try to aim it down into it. Now to take this fan out, you'll have to just pry on these little tabs that hold it in to unlock it. There we go. It's still connected on the electrical connector, so keep that in mind. I'm just trying to bring it up higher so I can reach it. And once you get to about here, you can disconnect it. To disconnect it, I'm going to pull back on this tab to unlock it and then push it down. There we go. Now pull the fan out the rest of the way. Perfect. Alright, so I know this is pretty hard to see, but down there's the bottom radiator hose. Let's undo this clamp. I'm going to try to use my special hose clamp pliers. You can also use regular pliers. They're just going to be a little harder to get in there. Squeeze on that clamp and let's remove it, or at least pull it back off of where it's locked onto. Again, this radiator does not have a drain, so a lot of fluid's going to come out. At this point, I have a collection bucket underneath. Let's drain it. One last step to removing this radiator is to unlock the AC condenser from the radiator. So you want to press on this tab, push it back, but also pull the radiator up at the same time, or sorry, the AC condenser, pull that up at the same time. It's a little tricky, so I'm going to use my screwdriver, press on this, lift up on the AC condenser. There we go, and let's do the same thing to the other side. Oops. This wants to lift the whole radiator. There we go. That's unhooked. Let's pull the radiator up and out. It's sitting in rubber bushings on the bottom. So get those to pop out. Make sure you clear this plastic piece here. And there it is. Let's get the new radiator in. Be careful of all of your fins so that you don't scratch them or damage them. Make sure you get it past everywhere where it needs to go. The overflow is going to keep falling and being in your way, but just move that. And watch out for the AC condenser, transmission lines here, lower radiator hose. Once you get it down all the way, it should fall into those rubber grommets that you see at the bottom. There we go. They both just fell in. Let's get this AC condenser hooked back on. It's got hooks like this on the bottom as well, or well, not the bottom, but a little bit lower, so they're not just on the top. So make sure you press it on both at once, like that. There's one side. Bring the other one up and over. Oops, radiator popped out. That's all right, it just went back in. Lock this down. It's not locked on this side, so I'll keep pressing it. Oh, it needs to slide over a little bit. There we go. And there we go. That just fell right in. So the AC condenser and the radiator are now locked as one unit. That's what we want. And now we'll just reverse the process. So we'll start with the lower radiator hose and work our way up. My hose clamp plier is still on here, so it's holding that hose clamp. I'm going to slide the hose over the radiator. Try and put it back kind of the same way that it was before. That way it'll seal up the best. Usually the hose will be molded around the clamp, so if you put it back to where it was, it's going to have the highest chance of perfect seal. So there you go. The next thing to put in is this lower transmission cooler hose. This one was a little challenging just because the AC line is in the way, but if you find the right angle, it should slide in. And to lock it in, just press it down. There we go. That just locked in. Give it a tug, make sure it's secure, which it is, and finish it up by putting on this cover, just like that. Before we put this upper one on, let's get the fan in place. Slide the fan down before it goes down all the way. Oops, move the overflow out of your way. Let's reconnect the electrical connector. Now we can slide the fan down all the way. Just like the AC condenser, this had a few hooks that locked it in. So once it's in place, make sure that it hooks onto where it's supposed to. Press it down and lock it in. There we go, that side just locked into place. Same with this side, perfect. Let's get the overflow reattached. It had a little slot on the bottom that it slides in. Pretty hard to see, but if you look at the right angle, you can see it. And the 10mm bolt at the top. Okay, snug that up. Since we're here, might as well get this upper hose in. And put the clamp right back to where it was, just like that. Back on the driver's side, let's reconnect this upper transmission cooler hose. Slide it and lock it in, make sure it clicks. And put this cap back on to ensure that it doesn't come off by itself. And there was this clip here that held the transmission line onto the fan shroud. Let's try and get that back in, re-secured. Press it in all the way. Let's get this plastic piece back in. Slide it to where it's supposed to go. Don't forget to clip the wire back in place. Slide it down. And let's get the bracket on. That went through here. Let's get this piece in, and then to secure it, we need to put the radiator brackets in. That locks them in, and of course the two 10mm bolts. And one last thing to put back is the hood latch. Make sure the cable goes where it needs to and the wiring is secure. And line this up the best you can. Again, like I said at the beginning, you can line it up with basically the dirt that is built around it. Okay, I'm gonna start by snugging up this one here. Hold it approximately where you want it to stay. And let's do these. Okay, looks like the bolt's set a little lower, so I'm gonna loosen this up. Kind of like that. All right, that lines up perfectly. So let's go ahead and fill the cooling system. At this point, we are ready to fill the cooling system since since coolant came out. So remove the radiator cap, well, coolant cap, I guess. And I have this special funnel that helps me bleed it and not spill anything. So I'm installing my adapter. That's gonna hold this down. Let's get the funnel on. Now we can fill it with some coolant. If you're not sure what to use, just check your owner's manual. I'm using universal, but basically just fill it until it stops bubbling. Once it stops bubbling, we'll run the engine and bleed it that way. And when you do that, when you run the engine, you basically want to have your heat on. Make it as hot as you can get it. That way the coolant will circulate through the heater core and push out all the air that might be stuck in there. And then you want to run it until it reaches operating temperature. You can look at the gauge on your dash, but also you want to check your cooling fans. Make sure the cooling fan comes on. Once it does come on to cool down the engine, that's when you know it has reached full operating temperature, at which point you can shut it off. And of course, as the engine is running, this might drain a little bit because it's pushing air out and sucking coolant in, so just top it off as needed. You want to have this funnel about a quarter of the way full. That way this is the highest point in the cooling system and the air naturally wants to come out. So now that this has all gone down, let's fill it some more. At this point it stopped bubbling by itself. Well, there's a couple small bubbles, but basically it stopped bubbling a lot. So I'm just gonna massage this lower radiator hose a little bit. That's gonna push out some remaining air. And at this point, let's start the vehicle and run it. Okay, let's turn on the car. And you come down to the heat. Make sure the heat is all the way at the hottest point and turn the fan on. You don't have to max it out or anything, just on low is fine. The important part is that the heat is on, AC off. You don't want the AC, and we'll just make it go to the vents. That way I can feel the heat once it starts coming out. Yep, I can feel air, so that's good. And now we'll just let this run till it warms up. Now I ran the vehicle, it warmed up, it bled, everything is good, it stopped bubbling. I'm gonna cap off my funnel here and remove it. And we'll get the radiator cap installed. Put this back, screw it on, make sure it's nice and tight, no leaks, and right there. And right next to the radiator cap is the overflow, coolant overflow tank cap. So remove it. Let's pour the rest of our coolant in here. There we go. At this point, if you look on the side of it, you'll see the full and the low mark. It's full. So at this point, you're ready to go for a road test.